In 1986, the film Highlander was released in theatres. Based on a screenplay written by Gregory Wyden for his undergraduate class at UCLA, the film released to average reviews. However, it did find some success in the home video rental market, and eventually spawning a fully fledged franchise including sequels, a TV series, a cartoon, which we'll look at later, and inevitably, video games. Although there were not too many of them, just 2 in fact, but there's some different versions of them, and also some cancelled games which are also worth a look, alongside the ones released, which have gone down in infamy. So let's take a look at the video games associated with this hit and miss franchise. There can be only one video game Odyssey for Highlander. Highlander centres around special humans called Immortals that are randomly born throughout history and, as the name implies, cannot die, unless via beheading. The Immortals are destined to fight each other until the time of the Gathering, where all remaining Immortals will meet and fight until one is left to claim the prize. The whole mythos isn't explained or explored too much in the original film, but provides enough of a novelty for the backdrop to all the action and sword fights, which are the film's definite strong points. Before we begin proper, let's take a look at the rest of the films. Highlander 2, The Quickening, was released in 1991 and fleshes out the lore of the Immortals, in the worst way possible, by making the Immortals aliens or something. There's a reason why the film is generally considered one of the worst films ever made. The director's cut made some positive alterations to the film, including removing the whole alien subplot, but there's only so much that can be done with that film, and the director's cut upgrades the film from one of the worst ever made to just plain bad. The third film, Highlander 3 The Sorcerer, just plain retcons the second film out of existence, and is an alternate sequel to the original. While it's an improvement over the previous film, that's hardly an accomplishment, and it's essentially a remake of the first film in terms of its plot points. Choosing to play it too safe after the disaster of The Quickening, Highlander Endgame in 2000 is more of a sequel to the Highlander TV series than the film, with Connor MacLeod meeting the TV series protagonist Duncan MacLeod. Highlander The Source was a TV movie released in 2007 that continued the TV series, being set in some sort of post-apocalyptic Earth, and seems to exist solely to kill off the cast of the TV series. A short film, Reunion, released in 2008, written by the writers of the TV series, ignores the events of The Source, meaning it probably has the same thankful fate as Highlander 2 in being declared non-canon. The only other film is Highlander The Search for Vengeance, an anime film released in 2007. This stars Colin MacLeod. Why are there so many immortal MacLeods? Who, over the course of 2,000 years, tries to hunt down another immortal, Marcus Octavius, from ancient Roman Britain to a post-apocalyptic future. The film feels like an unleashed iteration of the franchise, full of action and gore that would have led to an increased age rating in Hollywood. But this adaptation has no concern about that. It's not perfect, but it is genuinely one of the best versions of the franchise, and in some ways better than the original film, so I would definitely recommend it. Anyway, video games. When the original Highlander was released in 1986, video game publisher Ocean acquired the license to produce a game based on the film. This resulted in Highlander, released on the ZX Spectrum, Amstrad CPC, and Commodore 64. It is a fighting game in which you play as Connor MacLeod to defeat different characters from the film in a sword fight. This game is notorious for being downright unplayable, and genuinely one of the worst games ever made, and it's hard to disagree with that. The most significant problem with the game is that the controls are completely unresponsive. In theory, you can execute different attacks by pressing the attack button and up, forward or down. You can also parry enemy attacks by pressing backwards and attack. The trouble with all this is that most of the time, pressing the attack button seems to do nothing. Also, the enemies seem to be able to knock you down pretty easily, and proceed to chip away at your health bar until you stand back up. You can knock an enemy down yourself, but it seems to be extremely more rare for you to do so. Parrying is also useless and impossible, because you have no time to react to your opponent's attacks. The only way to win in this game is to just mash the attack button and direction and hope you win. Out of over 100 attempts in this game, I think I won around 15 fights, so while it's obviously not the ideal way of playing the game, it is possible to actually win a fight on a rare occasion. Oh, and the character's health regenerates very fast, which somewhat makes sense if they're all immortals. So by the time you can actually land an attack, your enemy's health will have regenerated, meaning again that you can't be tactical or slow, and mashing the buttons as fast as you can is the only way to get anywhere in this. There's also a 2-player mode if you can't be bothered with attempting to defeat the computer-controlled characters, and fancy a button mashing contest with a friend instead. The game consists of 3 whole stages, in which you face 3 different characters from the film. The first is Connor's house in the 16th century Scottish Highlands, in which you face Ramirez, who is played by Sean Connery in the film. The second stage, if you manage to get there, is Fazia, who is meant to be Fazil from the film's opening, set in an underground car park in present-day New York City. And finally, replicating the film's finale, you will face the Kurgan, spelled incorrectly in the game, on top of the Silvercup Studios building in Queens, New York. The different enemies play exactly the same as each other, although maybe the later enemies do more damage, but it's difficult to work out. As mentioned, this version was released on 3 different consoles. The ZX Spectrum is undoubtedly the worst version. The graphics make the characters barely distinguishable due to the limitations of the system. There's also no music, only some very annoying beeping sound effects whenever someone takes a hit, and an even worse effect when you defeat and behead someone. One advantage of the ZX Spectrum version is you don't have to defeat the enemies to advance through the game. You can simply change the tape to load the different characters. But again, there's hardly a noticeable difference between them. The Amstrad CPC version utilises the more powerful graphical capabilities of the console, so the characters somewhat resemble their film counterparts. The Amstrad version also manages to have a single piece of music for the title screen, an 8-bit rendition of Queen's It's a Kind of Magic from the film. It might just be me, but I felt like this version was slightly more playable than the Spectrum version, but only very slightly. Otherwise, the game is basically the same. The Commodore 64 version is essentially the same as the Amstrad version. The colour palette is slightly improved, and Queen's It's a Kind of Magic has been given a typical Commodore style mix. I would probably say this is the best version of the game, but that's hardly an achievement. None of the versions of this game are worth playing. You can barely play them at all thanks to the unresponsive controls, lack of almost any gameplay, and nearly unwinnable difficulty. Because of these reasons, Highlander has gained notoriety over the years as one of the worst games ever made, and it's hard to say it's not deserved. An internet rumour that has persisted is that the game was made badly on purpose, because the publisher, Ocean, got into a bad deal when they got the license to make the game, meaning that they would have to pay so much to the movie studio for each game sold that it would bankrupt them. This doesn't seem likely to be true at face value, because Ocean actively sought movie licenses both before and after Highlander, and was a main source of their output, so they would know not to sign up to a bad deal. Ocean also worked with Canon, who owned the rights to the Highlander film after their deal for Highlander, making a game based on another of their films, Cobra. It doesn't make much sense for Ocean to work for them again, if they were supposedly so screwed over by them for the Highlander game. There may be some truth that Ocean expected the game to be bad, as they gave the game out to an out-of-house developer, Canvas Studios, whose games were notorious for being a bit crap. Cannon were essentially a movie studio that specialised in cheap B-movies, so it might be that Ocean expected the film to be just another average, unremarkable and poor-performing film, so the licence wasn't that valuable to develop. And in part, they were right, as Highlander performed very poorly at the box office, and only gained popularity with its release on home video years later. This is all very much speculation here, but I think there's reason enough to discount the internet legend surrounding this game's development at face value. Either way, Highlander is a bad game, one of the worst licensed games, and one of the worst games ever. It is an unplayable mess with very little content. You don't need to play this unless you want to suffer button mashing for about 5 minutes before switching the game off in frustration. Moving on, the popularity of Highlander was a slow build. Its distribution on home video was eventually successful enough that Highlander 2 was released in 1991, although how the franchise survived after that is a miracle. In 1994, Highlander, the animated series, premiered as a separate iteration of the franchise, not compatible entirely with the stories of the film, but keeping some of the original characters and concepts. The story takes place in the 27th century, after a meteor struck the Earth around the beginning of the 21st century and set off the planet's nuclear weapons. Human society was obliterated, and any hope of a future for mankind was lost. Following this, all of the immortals met on the Hill of Oaths to swear, unsurprisingly, an oath, that they would all give up the game of fighting each other for the prize and instead become Jetitors, with the new duty of protecting and preserving mankind's knowledge until the day they can rebuild. However, one immortal did not swear the oath, the evil Cortan, who declares himself the winner of the game after all the other immortals took the oath to abandon it, and thus claiming the prize, which leads to him ruling the world. It is revealed in a later episode that Connor MacLeod, the protagonist of the film, actually challenged Cortan after he declared himself winner, but lost the duel, and having also betrayed the oath of not fighting, was banished to a different dimension, or something. The series doesn't really elaborate. In the 27th century, Quentin MacLeod, apparently a descendant of Connor MacLeod, but this contradicts the films where it's explicitly stated that immortals cannot have children. He's living with the Dundee clan when they are raided by Cortan's forces. Quentin is killed and resurrected, learning that he is an immortal. He meets Don Vincente Marino Ramirez, who is clearly based on Sean Connery's character in the film, Juan Sanchez Villalobos Ramirez, who explains to Quentin that he is the first immortal born since Ramirez and the other immortals took the oath, and he is destined to defeat Cortan and free mankind. The series focuses on Quentin, Ramirez, Quentin's young adopted sister Clyde, and whatever this pet thing is named Gaul, as they travel the post-apocalyptic world with the aim of meeting the other Jetitors so Quentin can gain their knowledge to become stronger and eventually defeat Cortan. Despite being a children's cartoon based on an adult franchise, the series still manages to keep some of the more adult elements of the film, and even though there's no beheadings on screen, there's still plenty of characters that are killed just off screen. The quickening is also not only activated by beheading another immortal, but an immortal can willingly transfer their knowledge and power to Quentin, which causes them to become mortal. The series, although not perfect and rife with some choppy animation and flat voice acting, does have a good story, and the post-apocalyptic world is a good setting within which to play with the concepts of the series. One particular episode that stands out is the 11th episode Fallout, in which Quentin travels to meet the immortal Prometheus, who possesses the knowledge of nuclear weapons. However, after Quentin learns what they are, and the potential of mass destruction that they have, Quentin refuses to take that knowledge, changing his mind only after Cortan threatens to take that knowledge for himself. Another episode, The Eye of Heaven in Season 2, features an immortal named Shepard, who was in charge of satellite defense in the 21st century, and made the decision not to shoot down the meteor that wiped out civilization, because he thought it would miss the Earth. And he is discovered in the 27th century as having a kind of post-traumatic stress disorder from his decisions that day. Based on the cartoon, Highlander, The Last of the MacLeods, was released on the Atari Jaguar CD in 1995. It is an action-adventure game, although apparently it was originally going to be a fighting game. Thankfully, we don't have to deal with another Highlander fighting game. The game's story essentially follows the first episode of the cartoon, as you, Quentin MacLeod, start the game following the raid on the village of the Dundees, and you waking up as an immortal. The game requires you to move around the fully 3D world, made of polygonal characters on pre-rendered backgrounds, as you fight the hunters, the foot soldiers of Cortan's army, and collecting items necessary to advance the game. Eventually infiltrating Cortan's fortress city of Mogonda and rescuing the remaining Dundee clan. It's an impressive looking game and has a decent scope for the time, as you can move around the environments mostly unimpeded, opening it up for exploration at your leisure. The game also has clips from the cartoon interspersed to drive the story, and the original voice actors lending their voice in the cutscenes. That said, there are definite problems that overshadow the technical aspects of the time. Firstly, the combat is extremely frustrating and requires more luck than skill. You have 3 attack buttons that each can perform different actions by pressing forwards or backwards when you attack. The combat is not actually that involved though. It's incredibly cheap and frustrating, and if you get one hit, you are staggered for such a long time that the enemy will just combo you to death, leaving you no time to recover. And of course, if you try to do the same, it just won't work. The way through the combat I found was to just do the low sweep attack and attack just as the enemy loses their stagger invulnerability. Again, if you let the enemy attack you, there's very little hope of recovery. Also, if there's more than one enemy attacking you, even that won't work, as you can only attack one enemy at a time, and there is no way to defend yourself from multiple directions. You have to either run, or try to get an enemy trapped on the scenery in some way so you can take them one at a time. You can pick up a gas gun at a few points in the game that can knock enemies out at a distance, but ammunition is extremely limited, so you'll have to use it sparingly. The controls are also a nightmare, opting for the tank controls popularised in games such as Resident Evil and Tomb Raider. This issue is compounded by the game constantly changing screens, making it difficult to maintain your direction or run away from enemies when the camera continually changes angle and position. There are also some points in the game where you'll have to dodge enemy gunfire, but there's no technique to do it effectively, it's just blind luck. Although the large, 3D open spaces are impressive for the time, the problem is that Quentin moves so slowly through the large landscapes, and the majority of the time will have you walking around with nothing happening in between. This becomes especially prevalent when you're trying to find an item you need to progress in the game. In the canyon level, you have to find 3 bunkers and memorise what is on a computer screen in each bunker to unlock a door and progress. If you don't make a note of these, you'll have to go all around the huge canyon again to look them up. And the game randomises the solution with every playthrough, so you can't just look up the solution online either. In fact, the game likes this puzzle so much, it has you do it again in a new location slightly further into the game, but at least at that point, you know to note the solution down the first time, so you don't need to backtrack. While the game received large praise upon release for its graphics and environment, the combat and controls were highlighted as negative points for the game. Although overall this didn't impact the high review scores the game received, the game was also intended to be part of a trilogy that would be released in quick succession. With the second game, Highlander 2, The Quest for Knowledge, Quentin would be searching for a cure for Ramirez after he is poisoned, travelling to find the other Jetters to gain their knowledge to do so. Highlander 3, The Time of Endings, would have concluded the story with a rogue Jetter planning to kill the population of Mogonda and Quentin having to stop them and rescue a girl named Alia, who presumably is the same person from the second episode, A Taste of Betrayal, although the rest of the episode doesn't match up with the game's intended plot, before you finally confront Cortan himself. This might have provided a conclusion to the story, since the cartoon itself was cancelled after the second season, without a proper ending. Unfortunately, the 2 sequels to The Last of the MacLeods were also never released, as the developers, Law Design Studios, closed down in 1997, and the planned PC ports were scrapped due to a merger of Atari's PC publishing division. A complete PC version of The Last of the MacLeods, which is a straight port of the Atari Jaguar CD version with no changes that I can see, was eventually leaked in 2004. It seems debatable whether work on the sequels was underway or even completed before the studio closed down, but it seems a possibility given that they were all planned to be released in quick succession. But sadly, no evidence of their existence has come to light. So there you have it, that is every Highlander game released. All 2 of them. But there's an interesting story behind these games and the franchise as a whole that has been worth exploring, and we're not quite done yet. There were some more Highlander games that were announced and development began on, but were cancelled before they were ever finished. A Highlander MMORPG called Highlander the Gathering was being developed by Callisto Entertainment between approximately 2002 to 2004. There was a trailer released for the game, but it does not reveal a lot about what it would be like. We see an immortal sword fighting with a woman who is presumably his lover, and her getting killed by another immortal. Fast forward to the present day, and the two seem to meet in an alleyway, ready to duel. It looks like the typical vengeance story, but I imagine the idea of the Gathering, getting all of the immortals to fight one another to claim the prize, would have been perfect for an MMORPG. Unfortunately, the game was never finished as the developers went bust, and SCI Entertainment, who acquired the rights, decided to not go through with finishing the game. In 2005, Highlander the Game was announced as in development for the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 and PC. Again, it also got a trailer in 2008, in which we see the playable character, Owen MacLeod, narrating the various eras and locations through which he has lived, from fighting in the Roman Colosseum, Viking raids upon England, and feudal Japan, amongst others. With the game being written by David Abramovitz, who was the head writer on Highlander the series, the game would supposedly have crossed over and featured characters from the series, including Connor and Duncan MacLeod. Gameplay would have you performing actions that would kill any mortal, such as using your body to conduct electrical currents and jumping off buildings, but since you're immortal, you'll probably be fine. The game was officially cancelled in December 2010, with no reason given, but maybe it was due to the publisher Eidos Interactive being purchased by Square Enix in 2009, and them choosing not to go through with it, since it seems to have been in development for quite some time. What lies in the future for the Highlander franchise? A remake of the original film has been floated around in the concept stages for quite some time, but it seems to be very slow in going into any form of development. I think the idea of a Highlander MMORPG could definitely work, with players fighting it out in the Gathering to claim the prize, but there's plenty of scope for games in the series exploring the different periods of human history, just as long as somebody releases a game with a decent combat system. Ugh. Thanks for checking out this video game Odyssey 4 Highlander. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel, it really helps. If you want to see playthroughs of the games featured in this video, you can check out the stream archives on Twitch, and you can support the channel over on Patreon for as little as £1 per month. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you for the next Video Game Odyssey.